Okay, so are you curious about Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
I mean, beyond the oil, right?
Right.
You hear about their changing economy, like there's a startup scene that's just exploding, and, well, you're in the right place for that. We are taking a deep dive today into an article.
Okay.
It's called Vision 2030 and the Saudi Startup Boom, a blueprint for entrepreneurs.
That's right. We're going to break it all down, like what's actually happening in Saudi Arabia
Yeah.
and why you should care about it, even if, you weren't planning on moving to the desert anytime soon.
Right, exactly. I mean, who would have thought? A thriving tech scene right in the middle of the desert.
It sounds a little crazy.
Okay.
But it's really happening.
Yeah.
This shift is driven in large part by what's called Vision 2030. It's a plan to move the Saudi economy away from just oil, to diversify it.
Vision 2030, you've probably heard that term.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm telling you, it's not just some, empty buzzword.
Right.
It's making a real impact.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the most interesting parts is the role that young people are playing.
Yeah, for sure. Saudi Arabia has an incredibly young population. Like 70% of the country is under the age of 35.
Wow.
And this generation, they've grown up digital.
Right, totally, yeah.
They're ambitious, and they're really looking to shape the future of their country.
Yeah, and it's not just about, the numbers. It's a total cultural shift. The article, it highlights this story
Okay.
about a woman named Reem, and she's just 27 years old.
Wow.
And she's built this, really successful, eco-friendly fashion brand, and she's done it, all through Instagram and TikTok.
Really?
No big investors.
Wow.
Just hustle and a real understanding of what people want.
That's amazing. It really shows you the power of, social media
Yeah.
and e-commerce in a market like this.
Yeah.
She was able to kind of go around all the traditional ways of starting a business.
Yeah.
And build her brand by, connecting with people directly online.
So smart, yeah. So, okay, we've heard some individual stories, but let's zoom out a bit. Let's talk big picture, Vision 2030. What does economic diversification actually look like when you're, on the ground?
Right. So it means focusing on sectors like tourism,
Okay.
entertainment, and technology, areas that haven't traditionally been associated with Saudi Arabia.
Right.
So they're putting a ton of money into infrastructure, education too,
Yeah.
and just creating an environment that's more friendly for businesses.
Okay, so for example, picture this, right?
Okay.
NEOM. It's this futuristic megacity that they're building from scratch in the desert, like a $500 billion project.
Oh, wow.
It's designed to be a global center for innovation.
Yeah, NEOM's a great example. They're not messing around.
Yeah.
It shows how ambitious they are. And it's, drawing talent and investment from all over the world.
Wow.
Startups are going there in huge numbers to create solutions for everything, from AI to sustainable energy.
That's so cool. It's like a sneak peek at the future they're building.
Ex-
Okay, well, that's impressive. But let's get practical for a second.
Okay.
What does success actually look like? Or startups in Saudi Arabia? Are there any companies that stand out as, examples?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So the article mentions Careem. It was a ride-hailing app founded in the Middle East. And Uber ended up buying them for a crazy $3.1 billion.
$3.1 billion. That's not just success. That's a validation
Right.
of the potential of this market. And it shows, these startups, they're not just playing around. I mean, they can compete globally.
Exactly. They're serious players.
Yeah.
And then there's Foodics. They're based in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And they developed this, cloud-based point-of-sale system for restaurants. They've raised $170 million in funding so far.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just a one-off thing.
Right.
There's a real pattern emerging. But I'm guessing there are challenges too, right?
Oh, of course. Funding is always tough, especially if you're just starting out. While there is more venture capital coming into the region these days, getting that initial, what they call seed funding, can be a struggle. Seed funding is basically the first money a startup raises to, get things going.
Right, yeah. And the article mentions that it's still really limited.
Yeah.
Which makes sense,
Yeah.
Investors want to see that you have something that actually works before they put their money in. But talent, finding the right people, that's another hurdle too, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's a real gap in skills, particularly in areas like tech and digital marketing too.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have a great idea.
Right.
But you need the right people to make it happen.
Sure.
Saudi startups are finding ways to tackle this, though, whether it's, attracting talent from around the world using platforms like LinkedIn or teaming up with universities to create specific training programs.
So we're hearing all about these funding challenges. What are like some common mistakes startups make when they're looking for funding? I mean, besides like not having a solid business plan, of course.
Ooh, that's a good question. One thing I see a lot is startups not really understanding like who their target investor is.
Okay.
Different investors have different levels of like risk they're willing to take, different areas they focus on.
Right.
So you really have to like tailor your pitch and your business plan to make it resonate with that specific investor.
So it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Exactly. You got to do your homework.
Yeah.
Figure out what each investor is looking for. Another mistake is not explaining clearly enough what problem they're solving.
Yeah.
And why their solution is like unique.
Right.
Investors get bombarded with pitches.
Yeah, for sure.
So you need to make yours stand out.
Yeah.
And, it's not just about the product itself
Right.
or the service.
It's about the team.
It's about the team behind it.
Yeah.
Because, investors are betting on people just as much as they're betting on the ideas,
It's about showing them you have the passion, the expertise, the grit to actually make it happen.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we can't forget about financial literacy, no matter where you are, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're launching a startup in Saudi Arabia or anywhere else, understanding these basic, financial concepts.
Right.
That's so important for everyone in today's economy.
Especially
if you're thinking of starting a business.
Absolutely. It's like they say, you have to know the rules of the game before you can play it well.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the article actually it used this example of an e-commerce business. So let's say your online store is booming.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Like you're making lots of sales.
Yeah.
But if you don't know how to manage like the money coming in, the money going out,
right,
how to handle inventory, well, you could end up struggling to keep up with demand.
Even though things are going really well.
Yeah, even when sales are great.
Yeah.
So, financial literacy, it's like the foundation for everything else you build on.
It is, yeah. Okay, but let's say you're listening to this and you're like totally inspired and you're thinking, all right, the Saudi startup scene, I want in.
Yeah.
Where do you even begin?
I'd say the first thing is just dive into the information that's out there.
Right.
Read articles, follow like thought leaders on social media.
Yeah.
Listen to podcasts like this one.
Exactly.
Get a feel for, the scene, the different people involved, and then see which sectors kind of like speak to you.
I love that. Knowledge is power, right?
Exactly.
And the great thing about, living in the digital age is that you can be like anywhere.
Yeah.
And still tap into all this knowledge.
Totally. You could be sitting in your living room in London or New York, learning about like investment opportunities in Riyadh.
So cool.
And don't be afraid to reach out to people who are already involved in the Saudi startup scene. Networking is super important.
Yeah, definitely. Like go to industry events. Join those online forums. Connect with people on LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
The more you put yourself out there, the more opportunities will just kind of come your way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you don't have to do it all alone.
Right.
There are incubators, accelerators, even government programs. They're all set up specifically to help entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Don't hesitate to ask for help. Find a mentor. Talk to people who have done it before.
Love that. It's all about finding the right people, the right resources to like guide you.
Yeah.
But even with all that support, it's still a big jump, right?
Yeah.
Moving to a new country and starting a business. So what should people like be aware of before they just jump in head first?
Well, things are still changing in Saudi Arabia when it comes to like the rules and regulations for business.
Okay.
And while the government is trying to make things easier, to streamline things, make it simpler to do business there can be some bureaucratic hoops to jump through. It's really important to do your research.
So the red tape is real. But what about like the culture?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia has its own unique customs and traditions, and it's really crucial to be respectful of those.
Of course.
Understanding those nuances of Saudi culture can really help you, to build trust and create those successful business relationships. Like, for example, it's important to understand that personal connections really matter.
Oh, God.
You need to build rapport before you jump into, the business side of things.
Like when you travel to any new country, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You want to learn a few key phrases, be mindful of the local customs. You don't want to offend anyone by accident. And it's like the same principle applies to business.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's worth mentioning that This Saudi government is really pushing for a more open and inclusive society.
Right.
They're encouraging foreign investment, they're empowering women, and they're investing a ton in education and cultural initiatives. So while it's important to be respectful of tradition, you also have to be aware of these, like, progressive changes that are happening.
It sounds like it's a really exciting time to be watching what's happening in Saudi Arabia. They're like embracing change, but also staying true to their heritage.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so for our listeners who are like really intrigued by all of this and are seeing the potential, what would be your advice for them on like taking that next step?
Well, I'd encourage them to think about what skills or knowledge they'd need to like really succeed in this environment. What kind of business would they create? What impact would they want to make? These are the types of questions that can help you come up with ideas and like focus your exploration.
And maybe those ideas could even become a reality. It's so inspiring to think about like all the possibilities.
Right.
But even if you never actually go to Saudi Arabia, the insights we've talked about today, they apply to any entrepreneurial journey, really.
That's so true. This is all about being adaptable, resilient, and always being open to learning and growing. It's about having the courage to follow your dreams, even when you don't know exactly what the path looks like.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, it really is. And even if, like taking over the world isn't really your goal. Right. These skills, the knowledge you pick up by exploring these kinds of opportunities, I mean, it's invaluable, really.
Oh, for sure.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Saudi Arabia's startup scene, let's take a second and just like think about what we've learned. We started off talking about Vision 2030, that really ambitious plan to completely transform the Saudi economy.
Yeah, and we saw how that vision is actually turning into action.
Right.
With huge investments in infrastructure, technology, and, a real push to move into sectors like tourism and entertainment.
We heard about Reem, too, the young entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah, she was amazing.
Who created this successful fashion brand just by, like, using the power of social media. Yeah,
she showed that with the right approach. Anyone can tap into this market.
And it's growing like crazy.
It is.
Well, we also talked about the success stories. Companies like Careem and Foodics.
Yeah, for sure.
Proving that Saudi startups can really compete on a global scale and attract serious investment.
Definitely.
But we didn't just focus on the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
We talked about the challenges, too.
Yeah, like the difficulties of getting that initial funding.
Right, and the need for more financial literacy.
Yes.
And how important it is to, like, understand the regulations, the culture, because things are changing all the time.
It's a complex system, for sure. Lots of opportunities, but definitely some roadblocks along the way. But, what really stuck with me through all this is the energy, the feeling that anything is possible in this environment.
Yeah, like it's changing so fast.
It is.
So for our listeners who've been with us on this journey, I want to leave you with this. It's this one last thought. Imagine like you're in this world, right?
Okay.
What special skills or knowledge would you bring? What kind of business would you create?
Yeah.
How would you like make your mark in this ever-changing landscape?
I like that. Those are some big questions.
They are.
But they're worth thinking about because whether you ever actually go to Saudi Arabia or not, these lessons we've been talking about today, I mean, they apply to anything you want to do.
It's true.
It's about, being able to adapt, being tough, and always, wanting to learn more and grow. And it's about having the courage to chase your dreams, even when you're not sure what's ahead of you.
That's perfect.
Thank you.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today. We explored the potential of Saudi Arabia's startup scene. We talked about the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And we even gave some practical advice for people who might want to get involved.
I hope this deep dive helped our listeners, gave them a better grasp of this whole dynamic, evolving landscape and maybe spark some ideas of their own.
For sure. And who knows, maybe one day we'll be like talking about one of our listener startups as like a success story right here on the show. Wouldn't that be something?
I would love that.
It would be amazing.
That'd be great.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Saudi Arabia's startup scene. Until next time, stay curious.